Annie Beers and Celeste Inman are therapists at the Vine Wellness Center and really are a part of our extended community. I know that there are a number of Sachs families who know these ladies, and kind of heard through the grapevine that there was some excitement when the speakers' names were found out. And so I appreciate you all coming this morning. And let me just ask you something. You know, we've done some lecture series kinds of things in the evening. We wanted to try something different by hosting these in the morning. How many kind of prefer a morning time like this over? There we go. That's universal, practically. Okay. Sorry it took us a while to get the hint, but we're going to be doing, in addition to this one, there'll be 3 more coming this year that we'll be doing that Annie and Celeste will do for us. So I've kind of introduced the Vine Wellness Group, child, adolescent, adult, and family counseling. Both these ladies are licensed professional counselors. They have a mature Christian walk, and that informs the way that they approach counseling and the way that they approach those who seek them out. And so they're committed to facilitating a mental, emotional, relational, and spiritual change, and basically to help you achieve healing, health, and growth in every area of your life. I was introduced to Annie and Celeste through Kim Lewis, who is our secondary school nurse, and have really enjoyed the interaction that we've had. Very much kindred spirits, I think, in the way that we look at, approach people and want to work with people and encourage them. And so very thrilled to have these two come and share with you something I think is probably very big on our minds, and that's just social media, the internet, and navigating all of that safely. Seems like 10 years ago when that was on the forefront, we were just trying to wrap our minds around what instant messaging was and all of that stuff. And it's not slowed down. We really haven't had enough time to, understand the impact of that on our families and especially on our children. And so want to welcome Annie and Celeste, turn the morning over to them and let them share. After they present, there will also be some time for Q&A, question and answer, and so make sure that if you've got something on your heart, this is a good time to get that answer for you. Please welcome Annie and Celeste.
Good morning. Thanks for being here. I'm not used to using a mic. Usually I'm pretty loud, but we appreciate you guys being here this morning. My name is Annie, and Celeste is here next to me. Just a tad bit more about our practice. Not only do we do in our mental health practice, but we believe in the whole collaborative effort of other professionals as well, which means we have a massage therapist. She is fantastic. Deals with a lot of chronic pain, past injuries, things like that. She also has the same worldview that we do when it comes to being a Christian and vocalizing that. So we love Erin. And then we also have a fitness trainer who has come in and joined us, and she offers a variety of classes as well as one-on-one. She too has the same worldview. We just pack them all in and we love it. So we all work together to maintain healthy bodies and minds. I'm going to hand the microphone over to Celeste, and we'll begin.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm guessing, I don't know if it was just the topic or great discussions that y'all have had in the past, but obviously we're going to be discussing navigating through the social media technology world and the safety of it all. But as Annie and I were preparing this, we were noticing there really is 2 different categories when it comes to the safety issues. There's more of the physical logistics, more of the software, the settings, the applications that you can have and install that do more of the actual tracking of what's going on with your children, that you can kind of track and monitor as to what interactions they're having, what they're doing on the social media. You can kind of monitor a lot more of that inappropriate usage there. But more of the category that we're going to be focusing on this morning has to do more with kind of making sure that you're educated on the apps that they're using, that they're involved with looking into making sure that it's age appropriate for them, and also being more aware of the possible concerns more of those applications might have to those. Along with that, we're going to want to discuss more about the boundaries that you'll want to try to set with your children, giving them those safety parameters to make sure, again, when it's not age appropriate or if it's not one of the safest applications, one that you're going to want to try to set a limit and boundary on. We'll be talking about some of the research, some of the effects that technology has had on children and adolescents, how to help your children make the healthy decisions when it comes to technology, making sure that there is more of that balance with the usage, pros and cons to the spyware, the different software that's out there. And then also making sure how to help support your children when they do have any type of unhealthy interactions out there within the technology. If it comes to cyberbullying or pornography that might come up within the applications. So things of that sort to be aware of that we'll be discussing more of. But before I guess we go more into some of the discussion, we're not totally against technology. It's here to stay. You all need to learn how to figure out how to deal with it. If you can't beat them, join them. So there are positives to technology. Of course, there is more of that quicker access now that they do have when it comes to researching or working, getting prepared for research papers or helping with their homework. And nowadays, of course, they can get online and figure out what assignments they might be missing or where their grade is at to make sure they're staying on top of that. So there is that easy access. Also, it is a positive because it's also a coping skill for them to have access to music. There's different relaxation apps that are out there. So there's different positives within coping skills that they can use. And then also, that's their main source of connection with their friends. And so that's a huge factor nowadays with teenagers and technology, is that they have that continued support system and interaction and the connection that way. But as we move through technology, of course, we're wanting to make sure that we're setting those healthy boundaries and setting those limits that they should be aware of so that they can have a healthier lifestyle as they grow older and into adulthood, that they now know, my parents have given me these parameters and helped teach me and guide me, so I know how to have healthy lifestyle with using technology and making sure that they have more of that balance, that it's not just all technology, that they still have other outlets. They still have other sports or other hobbies, as well as connecting with their friends outside, so that it's reducing the isolation and they're not isolating themselves. But of course, a lot of that also begins on how we model that. So we need to be very aware as to how we're using our technology, our phones, our computers, and as much time as we spend on them, because it all comes from us first and how we model that. So something else to be very aware of.
I think, is this one on?
Yeah, so we didn't grow up with all of this, and so we've all had to adjust and figure this all out as we became adults. And I think, I don't know about y'all, but I think I fought it for quite some time. I have 3 children. I have a 14-year-old as my oldest. And I think I fought it and was in denial that this is how they also use media to cope and to do, and the interaction with their friends, as Celeste said. And I think at this point, I've come to accept, after all this time, saying, you know what, we do have to moving forward, it's here to stay, and it's growing. And so looking at how they use these things different than we ever did has been helpful, and hopefully we can talk more about that today. The next category we're going to be talking about is the boundaries, and I just passed out some little cards, and we have a few statistics I wanted to read or have you guys read out loud, and then we'll kind of talk about those. So let me get them on mic here. Sorry.
No, it's good.
We're making it work.
Okay, statistic number 1, girls are using 20% more of the visually oriented social media platforms versus boys who are using 20% more of the video game related platforms on social media.
Probably not, yes, thank you. Probably not a surprise, but if you have boys, typically their interest, especially the younger they are, is more of the video games, more of the strategy games. But not just the games, but they go to Vines and they go to YouTube and all those different categories of apps and programs where they can watch people playing video games. I don't get it, but it is what it is. And so being mindful of the age of those individuals playing video games, for them to learn how to play the video games, but it's interesting to hear and watch because some are very inappropriate, but some make a living doing this. So that was something to be mindful of, and I learned a big lesson that way. Number 2.
Sleep experts have documented the impact that technology has on kids' sleep issues, and studies have linked sleep deprivation with obesity, depression, elevated blood pressure, mood swings, and lower grades.
Okay, so there's a lot of research on sleep that's out there right now, and this is not just for teenagers, by the way. This is also for us adults. I talk at length, I'm a marriage and family therapist specialist, so I not only see couples and families, but individual adults as well as teenagers. And the sleep issues is pretty common, and technology is a big piece of that. It's keeping us up. And what we know now in all the research is all of these different side effects or consequences of the lack of sleep, and we see it time and time again in our teenagers. Number 3.
Ages 7 to 11 need 9 to 11 hours of sleep, and ages 12 to 17 need 8 to 10 hours of sleep, according to the National Sleep Foundation.
So, not sure if you guys look at your kiddos and go, right on track, or maybe need some help. Those, very accurate. That is, I think that's a challenge for most families, especially when you have a lot of things you're doing in the evenings and at night, and then they come home and need to do their homework. It's a challenge for a lot of families.
Because teens engage less in face-to-face contact, teens are beginning to lack the recognition of social cues and empathy responses.
This is the one we get concerned about, and probably the reason why I fought this for so long, because they're more isolated but connected. So they're not in front of people as much as we all were. A lot of kids aren't even getting their driver's license or have the need to get their driver's license anymore. We wanted to get out of our house because that's how we connected. We're like, I need to go hang out with my friends. And the kids these days don't necessarily have that need or desire. They can pull their friends up on their phone and do a whole group FaceTime. So it's a lot more isolation. And so we are looking at providing balance for the kiddos. So even though this is maybe how they're connecting and it's different from us, providing the other opportunities to make sure that they do have the connection time. That's why a lot of people talk about family dinners. It's not just about being all in one place at the same time. You're also practicing all these things. You're practicing social cues, you're practicing conversation. Sounds scary, but there's a big need for that. Going to church, all the clubs and groups are involved in, having a good balance with that. Okay. So the other ones that I handed out we'll do in a minute. So recommendations on this particular area, and we're talking about boundaries. We talk about boundaries a lot, pretty much with any person that comes in, family, friends, when people ask us questions, we're talking about boundaries all the time. Plug-in limits, where I put, that was the first one. There's debate on this. Some families have a plug-in time, some don't. So some teenagers have the devices in their rooms and they have access to them and they're up till 2 a.m. You know, and they're connecting or even on their computer. We were seeing the research shows that most kids have more than one device, so up to 3 devices in their rooms. So they got iPads, their phones, their computers, some sort of gaming device, all in their rooms. And so that just creates the opportunity for them to be distracted and to want to do the fun stuff and therefore not get the sleep they need. So we recommend all the time with any family, have a plug-in time. An hour, preferably, and this is debatable, but, and how to do this, but an hour before they go to bed. So whatever their bedtime is, disconnecting an hour before. And I'm not just talking about the teens, I'm talking about everybody else, because this is an issue for adults as well. If you're on your devices, your brain is highly, highly stimulated all the way up until you go to bed. That creates an issue for your sleep. So you may go to sleep right away, maybe, but your sleep patterns are not going to be as deep. So that creates more of the consequences in the long run. So an hour before, so that may mean 6 o'clock. That may mean 7 o'clock. Kids won't be happy about it. But it's something that we recommend and figure out how to implement what's right for your family. Devices in rooms and versus common areas. Also recommend, because of the opportunity for them to just grab their devices when needed, is plug them in a common area, just because then they don't have access to them. And that's also a big argument between especially teens and parents, because they use it for so many things. My daughter uses it for her alarm. And so I said, well, let's invest in an alarm clock, we're going old school. So we went ahead and did that. And it's been a lot better. So again, kids have TVs in their rooms, kids have all that stuff, but it's up to you as a family and as parents what you feel is right for your kids. But that's just kind of the pros and cons of it. And like I mentioned earlier, the meal times. And for my family, I don't get home from counseling until maybe 8 or 9 o'clock, so I don't get the opportunity to have the dinners with my kids, but I have breakfasts. So I sit with them and have breakfast. So we have to be creative, and we have to figure out what works for our families. And it may not be the traditional, this is what you have to do, what we've always heard. We just have to figure out something that works for us. So that way we can practice all those good interaction times. And boundaries, yes. All right, and then next is the decision making. I think that goes into, it slides and connected to boundaries. We have boundaries, but we also have the choice as to whether or not we want to implement boundaries. How many are familiar with the Cloud and Townsend Boundary Series? Okay, some of y'all. One of our favorite series. Great authors. Christian authors. Henry Cloud actually just posted something on Facebook. He was actually a speaker at CBC. Oh, how long ago? 2 years ago? A long time ago. It goes by fast. And so what they teach is a series of boundaries, kind of general. They also have a book on marriage and boundaries, families and boundaries, teens and boundaries, dating and boundaries. I mean, you name it, they probably have it. And so that goes into, once you have those boundaries set and those guidelines in place, then it's up to you whether or not you're going to follow them. So, you know, with teenagers and youngers, not just teens, but younger kids, they have free will, right? And so that's the part where us parents come in. So the big thing is setting the expectations. Have those discussions before they even get their devices. How many of your kids already have devices? Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And that's pretty common. It doesn't matter what age, you see them at all different ages for different reasons. You can start these discussions if your kids don't have them yet. Start them early as to what it looks like. What are the healthy boundaries? What does it look like to, have a good healthy habits? That's what I was thinking of. With your phone, with your computer, all those sorts of things. Once your kids have them, it's not too late. You continue to talk about them weekly. Use examples you hear out in the community of things that have gone on, I use that all the time. Saying this thing in the news, hey, what do you think about this? When it comes to kids, teens, things that are going on in the community. And that way we can sit and talk about what our morals and values are as parents, so they can hear it over and over again. Repetition, it's all about repetition. So we've got the fear of missing out. So you've got that article that you picked up. That's pretty big. Not just for the kids, but I think there's a little bit of that in us adults as well, if we're honest with ourselves, because we've become very attached to our devices. But for kids, particularly with the way that they interact with other kids in social media, it has become a huge anxiety if they do not have their phones. So we see quite a few kids struggling with the anxiety and furthermore, depression. And then when you say, well, you know, let's unplug for a while and just kind of not have it, you see like this intense fear come over their faces. Have y'all seen that at all with your kids? I know I have. And so that is something that we felt was pretty important for a handout. Take it home, read it, you know, share it with people. Share it with your spouses, family, because it impacts how the relationship they have with their devices. So open-ended questions. Who uses this technique with their kids? And knows what it is. Yep. Okay. So instead of talking at them, which I think as little kids we tend to talk more at our kids because we're guiding them, we're teaching them, it's a different style. As they grow older, you can still talk at them and talk with them, but the more you're talking, the more they tend to tune out. So open-ended questions are extremely important, but it's a whole different way of talking with your kids because you're putting it out there and they're having to then in turn solve their own problems or have an open discussion about their problems in decision making. So open-ended questions, there's examples of those in that handout. Because I think some parents will tell us, well, to have to stop and think about how to reword my questions, and you're right, it's a whole different way of talking with them, but you want them to start coming up with some of the solutions and talk through, well, how do you think that's gonna work out? And how do you really feel about that? What are the pros on this? What are the cons? And you're guiding them through that process. And so that way they can really start to grasp that concept. And that the last one is, we're really just trying to, at this age, at all these ages, is really helping them learn how to problem solve.